What's up, losers? Today I'm delivering you another r/fatlogic video. Because why not? This is episode 27, which is 3 cubed, in case anyone is feeling a little mathematical today. But I digress. I've got some funny posts here to take a look at. So I'll stop wasting your time and get right into it.
No amount of adipose tissue on a body, nor consumption of junk food, could be as harmful to health as decades of shame, obsession, body hatred, and the worship of thinness supremacy.
Whoa, so dramatic. I've got to give it to some of these fat activists. They really have a gift for making their silly ideas sound righteous and profound. You know, superficially at least. But when you actually consider what's being said beyond the flowery rhetoric, it doesn't really hold up to much scrutiny. For starters, it's setting up a binary with obesity on one side, and shame, obsession, body hatred, and thinness supremacy on the other. Which implies that if you aren't fat, or you don't embrace being fat, these are all things that you will inevitably experience or believe in. Needless to say, this is rubbish. Most thin people are not obsessed with being thin. Contrary to popular belief, maintaining a healthy weight is not, at least logistically, that difficult. Certainly not difficult enough that one must be obsessive to achieve it. So in general, thin people have more important things to obsess over than simply being thin. Sure, there are people with body image issues and eating disorders who might be obsessed. But these people are a minority. And these issues usually stem from complicated psychological problems and traumatic experiences, which cannot be remedied by banal body positivity messaging. As for shame and body hatred, when did those become thin people problems? From what I've seen, they're much more common among fat people than they are among thin people. But by all means, continue to pretend that the willingly fat are all shame and insecurity free, living blissful lives in their larger bodies, floating distantly over the heads of us miserable thins like clouds of pure joy. I'm sure at this point some of you are thinking that I'm missing the point of the post, because it's actually targeted towards fat people who want to be thin, rather than thin people themselves. But I have, in fact, deliberately rejected this framing, because, well, it's based on a faulty premise. If one presupposes that fat people cannot lose weight and keep it off, as fat acceptance followers do, the choice being presented here is between being fat and ashamed, and being fat and shameless, haha. But because I do not believe that weight loss is impossible for fat people, the actual choice is between being fat and ashamed, and being thin and less ashamed. Don't get me wrong, I don't think that anyone should feel ashamed of their body to the point that it causes them severe emotional distress. But I am something of a realist. And I do think that if someone is ashamed of their obese body, it would be a good idea in most circumstances for them to lose weight, as this will ease their discomfort over the way they look and feel, as well as improving their health. Fat activists like to pretend that insecurity and shame can be cured by simple words of affirmation. But for most fat people, this will not work, because despite what fat acceptance might like to tell them, most fat people don't actually want to be fat. If you really want to help them feel better, stop telling them that dieting is impossible, and start encouraging them to pursue the healthy change that they really desire. Oh, and as a final note, people preferring to be thin than fat does not equal quote-unquote thinness supremacy. And nobody is making you worship anything. Could we tone things down a little, please?
Not the dermatologist telling me I have a skin issue, and it'll only go away with weight loss.
How? Certain diets can cause skin issues. But wait, nah, shut the frick up, dermatologist.
She said it's from the skin rubbing together, lol.
She need to be fired. That's silly. I am overweight, and my skin rubs together. But that's not why I get rashes or hives. I wish someone would.
If the issue is skin rubbing together, cotton clothes/pajamas, and the right moisturizer, makes a world of difference for me.
I have so many moisturizers, lol.
Do a spot test. I find that some get itchy around my double chin area, where it gets trapped, and some don't.
Here we have another vintage fatlogic offering, haha. A bunch of fat people with too much skin that's rubbing together, and apparently coincidentally, skin problems, lashing out at a dermatologist. You know, a doctor, an actual professional, a specialist, even, for suggesting that they might be related. Because what would they know? Right, obviously being fat can't be to blame for anything ever. If I were to pinpoint what it is that turns the general public off to fat acceptance, there's a lot, don't get me wrong, but I think their casual disdain for and snide dismissal of doctors and scientific experts would be right up there. Not only does it expose them as a bunch of ignorant hacks, but it also highlights their childish mindset of assuming that they know best at all times, and their outright refusal to accept criticism, even from those who have well proven their expertise in the relevant subjects. While there are obviously notable exceptions, and any field will have its so-called skeptics, I think that most people hold disciplines like medicine in a somewhat high regard. They respect the time, effort, training, and resources that go into producing doctors, and they are thankful that society affords them the opportunity to consult with these experts and receive an informed opinion that they would be unable to arrive at on their own. To see these expert opinions so casually disregarded, then, leaves a bad taste in one's mouth. Regardless of whether one is willing to accept an initial diagnosis, or wishes to seek a second opinion, it couldn't hurt to at least show a minimal level of respect to a doctor who has, presumably, tried their best to give you the help you need. As I always say, a little humility goes a long way. Now don't get me wrong. I can't be sure that the dermatologist here has given the right advice to the commenter. I haven't seen the person's skin. I'm not a dermatologist, and I'm obviously relying on only one side of the story. But the way that these fat activists all jump in to affirm that the dermatologist must be wrong, despite having no more information than I do, speaks volumes to how insular the fat acceptance community is. To them, it would seem, there is only ever one correct answer. And that's the one they want to hear.
Late night takes, but at least part of the reason BED is a eating disorder is barely talked about, is due to fat phobia.
See, this is one that I actually agree with. I do believe that part of the reason people don't talk about binge eating disorder is because they just assume fat people are lazy and greedy, and that if they wanted to lose weight they would. When in reality, BED is a disorder that can warp someone's thinking and behavior patterns just like any other. I would even go further and say that the near-total absence of BED from the popular discourse around obesity is one of the biggest obstacles to progress on fighting the disease. Raising awareness of BED would destigmatize obesity, without sugarcoating the dire medical consequences of failing to lose weight in the long term. It would encourage people to seek the mental health and dietary support that they need, without the fear of being fat-shamed or dismissed as lazy. In short, bringing BED to the table would be a win for everyone. That is, other than the fat acceptance movement. because recognizing BED flies in the face of everything that the movement stands for. Instead of having a frank discussion about the unhealthy abuse of food as a coping mechanism, fat acceptance seeks only to enable overeating, and to spur its adherents onto new heights of self-destruction, under the banner of health at every size. In this way, fat acceptance and BED are, for all intents and purposes, incompatible. Fat activists would no longer be able to prattle on about how diet culture gives people eating disorders, because their eating habits would be equally recognized as disordered. They would have to admit that their way of living was unhealthy, to make real effort to change, and to stop trying to convert others to their way of living. And let's be real, none of that is going to happen, haha. So yeah, we should by all means spread the word of BED. I want as many people to know about it as possible. And I hope to see it attain a place of greater understanding in the public consciousness. But I am fully ready for fat acceptance to stand in the way of this progress with all the ferocity of a wounded animal. So buckle up, I guess. Well, that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed today's posts and my commentary, such as it was. What do you think? Should BED be talked about more? Are dermatologists full of shit? Is being fat better than worshipping thinness supremacy? Let me know in the comments. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, or I'll make you pledge allegiance to Noom and Jenny Craig. Just kidding, haha. Anyway, catch you later.